Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and being here in person in the rain, might I say. And also, thank you for all those joining us online. I'm Brandy McNeil. I am the director of the New York Public Library Adult Services Department, which includes our ESOL, adult literacy, outreach, adult programming, career services, and Tech Connect department. Tech Connect provides free digital literacy and workforce readiness classes in more than 80 libraries across Staten Island, Manhattan, and the Bronx, in person and virtually. You can attend classes on everything from internet basics, advanced Excel, Python, JavaScript, graphic design, audio and video production, podcasting, and more. You can check out more info and register for these classes by going to nypl.org/computers. Today, we are excited to continue with our newest initiative called Tech Talks. Tech Talks are a series of live events that take you behind the scenes into the tech industry and give you insights to learn from experts via panel discussions and fireside chats, like the one we're doing today. So today we have a team of experts who will discuss NFTs and everything you want to know about it. I would like to give a special shout out to Mikhail Valentin, who is supposed to be our host today, but is unable to do so because he lost his voice. So we have the lovely Jenna Lee, who will be hosting today. If you have any questions at the end, please come up to either of the mics on either side of the stage. And I am excited to introduce to you and welcome to the stage Stephen Diolis, Iris Nevins, Dr. Limni Perez, and Jenna Lee. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brandy, Dr. McNeil. We are really excited to be here. This is our very first Tech Talk that's happening live in person. We've had 2 previous Tech Talks, but this is the first one that we're doing actually on site. So we're super glad to have you and joining us today. I'm Jenna Lee. I am the Media Lab specialist here. I'm filling in for Mikhail Valentin. He unfortunately couldn't make it, but he is really the creative brain behind this project and really dreamed it all and put it together. So unfortunately, he can't join us. And luckily for you, you get to learn with someone who is not an expert in NFTs. Before we jump into it, we want to put out a little disclaimer and say there's a lot of buzz around NFTs. People are curious about it. People love them. People hate them. There's controversy, and that's one of the big reasons we want to bring it to a public space and discuss it, because there's nothing more powerful than understanding actually what's going on in the technological world. And luckily for all of us, we're in the room with some folks who are actually on the forefront, the vanguard of this field, and working to shape it into what it is currently and into what it is becoming. And so we're really lucky to sort of pick their brains and get in their heads a little bit and understand what this technology is and where it might be going. So I would like to introduce to you, we have Stephen Diolis on your left. Stephen Diolis is an educator, tech enthusiast, coder, entrepreneur, legal fellow, advocate, consultant, and subject matter expert. And he does research in the intersection of technology and the law. He writes, he advises, and his specific areas of expertise include blockchain technology, risk management strategies, data privacy governance and compliance, as well as a host of other legal issues that have to do with disruptive technologies. Next to Stephen, we have Iris Nevins. Iris is the co-founder and CEO of Umba Daima, which is a creative NFT studio, which is building a multicultural, collaborative Web3 community. Umba Daima builds out brands and programs to support its mission, with Black NFT art being the most popular project. Iris sees NFTs as a revolutionary tool for empowering under-resourced communities to generate wealth through ownership of IP and digital assets. And she is also a former teacher and community activist who eventually became a software engineer. And she recently left her full-time engineering management role at Vox Media to serve as the full-time CEO of her own company, Umba Daima. Last but not least, we have Dr. Lemni Perez. She was born in Harlem, New York, and she's bilingual in English and Spanish. She's an Afro-Dominican writer, psychologist, abstract NFT artist, and collector. She is the curator for NFT.tip's Searchlight curatorial team, the leading coach of the Dream Conduit, which is a carbon-neutral nonprofit DAO, which I just learned stands for Decentralized Autonomous Network.
Organization.
Yeah, oh, right, not N. And Dr. Lemni has also sold over 60 one-of-one NFTs and has been collected by World of Women and Nyla and has shown artwork in a dozen NFT art shows. She's featured in Forbes magazine and is also the seasonal creative director for the Mint List on Spotify. So we are very excited to have all of you here with us. Also, for those in the audience, those joining us online, if you are interested in participating in this discussion, we will have some time for audience questions. We have 2 mics at the front of the room, so the ending of this conversation, we're going to invite you up and you can come ask any questions that you've thought of throughout the course of the evening. If you're joining us online, you can tweet at us with the hashtag NFT TechTalk. All one word, and we will be monitoring that. I have my partner in crime, Jose, in the back, and he is monitoring that. He's going to send us whatever you say on our tweets so we can hopefully incorporate it if we have time. So please ask your questions, and I might not have answers, but I know a couple people who might. So without further ado, are we ready to jump into it?
Let's do it.
Okay. I know many of you are wondering the big question, just to start out with. I think we want to define some terms. What is an NFT? Steven, our legal expert, I want to kick it over to you. You can feel free to jump in, Iris and Dr. Lemni. But what's an NFT? We got to start somewhere.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. And a lot of resources that we take a look at, whether if it's the news or social media, usually don't do a great job of explaining what an NFT is. So I'm gonna try to keep it as simple as possible. An NFT is a digital representation of an underlying asset. That's not that simple, so let me break it down further. An NFT is essentially a digital token or something that is digital that represents something else. A real life example that we can think of would be the title to land or title to a house. The title is not the actual piece of land. It's a representation that shows ownership of the land. It's the same idea with NFTs. All an NFT is a digital item that represents that you own an underlying asset. Now, does that represent that you legally own that underlying asset is a whole nother question, but it does represent that your crypto wallet or your digital wallet has that underlying the token that represents the underlying asset.
That's a good start. Does anyone want to say what it stands for? We have a
Sure.
NFT.
So NFT stands for non-fungible token. And what that means is that it's not fungible, meaning that each token is individual and unique to itself. And what's great about that is since each token, the thing that represents the underlying asset, is unique, we can use that token to uniquely represent different underlying assets. So it stands for non-fungible token. An example of something that's fungible would be the US dollar, right? There's not really a difference between one US dollar versus another US dollar. They're essentially the same. The same concept does not apply to NFTs.
Right, so non-fungible, it's unique. It's not, you can't swap one for the other, and it has value for what it is and what it represents.
Yeah, I also want to be careful on with some of the language that you use, so technically speaking, one NFT can be swapped for another NFT if, you know, two individuals decide that they want to trade their NFTs amongst each other. But those two tokens are unique representations onto themselves. So they can be swapped in the sense, but they're not the same.
Got it. And now that we've sort of gotten a basis of what an NFT is, what a non-fungible token is, I want to follow up with a question to Iris. Not what is an NFT, but then why NFTs? This has been an interesting tool, especially in the art community, and I want to understand what is its value to maybe creatives? Why are people currently so interested in NFTs?
Yeah, so, you know, software is a technology that is used to solve problems, right? Like usually when you build an app, you're trying to make people's lives easier in some sort of way. And so the beauty of NFTs is that it can be used to make not only the ownership of an asset simpler and easier, but also the facilitation of the actual like buying and selling of the asset as well. So that's kind of the one of the powerful things about NFTs. In addition to that, NFTs are created using blockchain technology, and blockchain technology allows you to be able to track all of the transactions and all of the activity in a public way and that everybody can access. So I just wanted to preface that underlying technology, the blockchain technology, is a key component here. And then when it comes to the assets that underlie NFTs, you know, as you were saying, they can be different types of assets. The simplest kind of breakdown is physical versus intellectual property. Okay, so you have physical property like a house, a car, etc., and then you have intellectual property, which is creations of the mind. So this is art, this is music, this is, you know, fashion and dance and things like that. And historically, it's been very difficult for creators to monetize their intellectual property. And, you know, around the world, we see that creators struggle to make a living, and they struggle to, society doesn't really put a lot of value on their creativity. And part of that also has to do with the fact that it's just, it can be very difficult and time consuming and expensive to monetize your intellectual property. So what NFTs have done for creators is it has provided an avenue, a tool for them to be able to take their intellectual property, turn it into an asset, and then they can sell it online using these marketplaces that facilitate very simple and straightforward trading.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So can maybe any of you explain or just give some more examples, like what's something that could be an NFT? You mentioned like music, dance, some sort of creative thing, but maybe some examples of types of NFTs that you've seen recently, just to assign something tangible to this discussion. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, you know, the most common thing that a lot of folks have seen is digital art. Okay, so you have animations, for example, photography, digital paintings, films, short films, right? These are all things that can be taken and turned into an NFT or sold as an NFT. You can also sell music. Any sort of digital file, essentially, can be sold as an NFT. So those are all examples. We're starting to see people incorporate more physical art using NFTs. It's a bit more challenging because you have to be able to tie the digital item to the physical item. So that part of the industry has taken longer to take off. But we are starting to see people in the fashion world, for example, starting to sell NFTs that represent physical fashion items. And if you buy the NFT, then you can get that physical fashion item. We're also starting to see fine artists who do sculpture and paintings and things like that starting to use the technology as well to sell their art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
and I just want to add, we were having a discussion earlier. So I just want to emphasize Iris's point. Back in law school, I actually wrote a paper about NFTs, and I turned that into an NFT. So it's really limited, just by your imagination. To be honest, pretty much anything could potentially be an NFT.
Yeah, and I would love to add to that also. One of the things that interested me as a clinical psychologist was seeing how I could like leverage the technology to have projects of social impact. So one of the projects that I was involved with was involving 20 artists and 20 spoken word poets. And this was curated by Hanifa Walida. And what she did was she collected all these artists, and we did an online on cyber show. And all those fees that were collected from selling those NFTs went to a gentleman called Keith Lamar, who has been on death row for 22 years. So the money that was earned from selling those NFTs went to pay for his legal fees. So that is one way that NFTs are also leveraged, not only to sell art, for creators to have a direct kind of relationship with their consumers, but also to leverage the technology to really make impact to people who are in very dire situations in life, and collectively create art together to make a social impact on other people's lived experiences. So
There's one more thing about NFTs that we completely forgot to mention, which is the smart contract.
yeah.
And that's a big part of what makes NFTs so special. So smart contracts are contracts that underlie the NFT, and it's not a legal contract like that you would sign. It's essentially software that has rules laid out that dictate how the NFT can be used, how it can be traded. You set certain limitations or stipulations. And so one of the most common rules that have been written into these smart contracts are royalties, essentially, perpetual royalties. And so that means that when a person creates an NFT, they can essentially dictate that every single time that NFT is traded, the original creator or whoever they designate can get a percentage of that sale. And so what it allows for is, as the value of the NFT increases over time and it continues to get traded or sold for more and more money, that a percentage of that money is going back to where the creator designated it. And so it's also really powerful for social impact organizations or projects, because you can set it up where a percentage of the revenue is going into an organization or a nonprofit or a community or something of that sort.
Yeah, we're really starting to see, I think, from this discussion, how NFTs are opening up new possibilities in the trading world or in the art trading world, in order to have a social impact or even have a stronger relationship between the the collector and the person who's acquiring the NFT, and the person who's creating it. And so, can you talk a little bit more about how the technology makes that possible?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, like Iris was saying, with the smart contracts, a lot of rules are written in that allow someone to designate what happens with specific NFTs, where they can go, how they can be used. And one of the easiest examples that I like to use explaining smart contracts is to think of a vending machine. And the way a vending machine works is you would put the dollar in, and when you hit the button, out pops whatever soda that you chose. Those are rules that were written into the software for the vending machine. The same idea applies to smart contracts, where once the NFT is purchased and or sold and traded, then it would direct whatever cryptocurrency wallet the user who wrote the smart contract wanted those funds to be sent to.
And this is a question, I guess, going back to Iris. You mentor artists who are sort of considering moving their work into the NFT space. And as people who are maybe perhaps completely new to this field, there must be a lot to navigate. It sounds somewhat complicated. What are some potential pitfalls and ways that you would sort of focus your advice and mentorship for a new potential, like a new artist who's interested in moving into the NFT space?
Yeah, so there's a few key things that I think is important for anybody that's trying to work with NFTs. One of them is to not rush. There's oftentimes a sense of FOMO, fear of missing out. And so people will kind of rush into creating an NFT without actually sitting down and making sure they understand, making sure that they have a proper plan. And, some mistakes can be expensive, right? Like if you don't know what you're doing, you may waste money trying to do something that, you don't really understand. So I would say the first thing is to really just take your time, do your research, pay attention to what other folks are doing and the different strategies that they're using, and have a strong understanding of like what your goals are for yourself and what your vision is for yourself, and then develop your strategy according to that. I think that is like the most important thing. And not everybody needs to create an NFT, right? Like maybe you realize you assess your goals and your vision and you realize that you don't need to do NFTs, and that's totally fine. The other thing that's really important is, if you're an artist that has an established brand, right, and you're already kind of selling your art to collectors in the traditional world, that it's not very straightforward to just go into NFTs and start making sales right away, because usually the people that are in the traditional world are not very familiar with NFTs. So you might go and create NFTs and try and sell it, and they're like, what is this? I don't know what this is. So a lot of artists, you have to really kind of pick one of two paths, which is either you go into the NFT space and you build an audience amongst people that are already NFT collectors. They're already onboarded, they're already educated, which is essentially in many ways kind of like starting over, right? You're like building a new brand from scratch. Or you go through the process of educating your existing customer or collector base on what NFTs are and convert them into NFT collectors. And so it's important to understand your audience. If your audience is maybe older, right, less tech savvy and things like that, then it's gonna be harder for you to convert them. And so those are all things that you have to think about and consider in your strategy. Another thing, outside of creators, because there's many different use cases for NFTs, and one of them that we didn't talk about yet is utility. You can use NFTs to provide access to utility, to resources, to experiences, right? And so this is a use case that is very relevant for people that own businesses, okay? If you own a restaurant, if you own if you provide some sort of service, maybe you're a speaker or a life coach or something like that, you can use NFTs in your business to provide access to your services and to your utilities. And so, just kind of thinking through what your goals are and understanding the landscape and recognizing that you don't have to do exactly what you see people on TV doing. There's a much broader kind of landscape here than what you see on the news. And if you just take some time to dig a little deeper, you'll realize that there's this whole world that's it's like hidden in plain sight. And there's a really wide range of things that you can do.
I can piggyback.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's dig a little bit deeper. We're sitting with someone who has sold over 60 one-of-one NFTs, and you had to start somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you can share a bit about your pivot into NFTs. You have been an artist, and you've made the move into that space.
Sure. So originally, I was a psychologist, right? And so I didn't have I was kind of like a dormant artist. I had come into college as a film student, and my parents were like, "No, you're not doing that. Like, they're like, you gotta go make some money, right?" And so when NFTs came on, I think that it was like during the pandemic, and also I was kind of going through like my midlife crisis, and I was kind of changing and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I think all of us were forced to sit down. And with that time, all of a sudden this technology came in, and I went into this incubator called Clubhouse, which is an audio app where a lot of people go in and listened to what other people were doing. Clubhouse has been a little bit substituted by Twitter Spaces, and most of the folks in the NFT community are typically there, listening, learning, going into spaces, hearing about what other people are doing with their projects, etc. So I was in Clubhouse, and I was very much hesitant to go into NFTs because I was not very tech savvy. I'm a clinician. I'm used to working, with people who are in prison, with people who are, working abroad internationally, in Nepal with women who are survivors of sexual-based, gender-based violence and things like that. So for me, technology was not as easy to kind of navigate. And so I was very hesitant. And I didn't really mint my first NFT until I was in the space for 3 months. Okay, which is a significant amount of time for me at that time, right? But when I did, I was very well equipped with not only understanding what I was doing, but more so with having acquired a community, because I did not have a community of collectors as an artist previously in kind of like the real world, and coming into the space, it's what's most important is to really understand that your collectors are the people who are supporting you and are working with you to support your vision and are investing in you and the promise that you're providing. As a psychologist, some of the NFTs that I have created also have a utility, like Iris has mentioned, and some of that utility includes doing spiritual coaching. I've been meditating for 30 years. Right? So this is like something that I attach to the NFT while also creating my art. What I really love about this space is this opportunity for you to integrate yourself fully as a full person. You don't have to silo off or leave any parts of your identity. You can really bring yourself completely and fully to the fore and really just explore different parts of yourself, different value systems, assets, skill sets that you might have that you want to attach to the NFT and utilize that as a way to leverage the utility or just your presence and what you want to do and the type of impact that you want to have in the space.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about that that idea of utility and sort of building a community. It sounds like there are ways that that the creator can continue to engage with with the folks who are appreciating and circulating their NFTs and their artwork. Can you explain a little bit more about how that works?
Yeah, I can say a little bit just quickly, and then I would love to hear. Obviously, one of the ways that I've found in terms of really engaging communities on Twitter, social media for sure. I utilize and I leverage my Instagram as my portfolio, where I keep track of all the things that are that's happening to me as I move throughout. But really, where I sell and I connect with community is on Twitter, and that's where most of the folks are kind of like coexisting and pitching each other's work and really sharing and making sure that the work is being visible. I had never had any social media, like I just mentioned. I worked in prison, so I had a really low profile, when it came to kind of like being in public spaces. And from being an NFT period, I've already acquired almost 18,000 followers in 1 year. Okay, so this really speaks to I'm insane on Twitter. I really love it. I'm on there all the time, but it's really about this engagement and being genuine, and really being honest and showing your work and bringing people on this journey with you. That's really appeasing. Now, not everyone is a social media person. I didn't think that I was going to be, but as a psychologist, I just love people and I love to engage. So that's something that worked for me, but there's other ways to do this. And this is not the one and only way, but it is a very important one because social media allows you to reach, I can reach about 700,000 accounts per month, just utilizing social media. So it's one way to do it, but not the only. There's Discord, which Iris, I'm sure, could probably talk about a little bit more, because I'm not as savvy on the computer, but I can do people, so you just kind of get in where you fit in, and you make it work for you. So whatever avenue that might be, there's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, I would like to add there's a lot of utility use in the gaming space where NFTs are being used amongst different video games. So if you purchase an NFT with one video game, that video game developer may have a contract with another video game developer, or they may make a part two to the game. And if you put a lot of work and effort into developing the NFT in one game, you can then now transfer that effort into another game, which is something that we haven't really seen in the gaming space until NFTs have become a thing.
Can we just stop a minute and say, like, what kind of NFT would you get in a game? Like, can you explain that a little more?
Yeah, sure. So I think that that's a great question. An example of an NFT that would be within a video game would be like a cat icon NFT, just to give one example. And so the purpose of that video game is to use your cats to kind of breed other cats, so that you could have like a cat family. You can then, if that cat game developer, I know this sounds like a little bit crazy, but
it exists, right? Like, it's a thing.
Welcome to the world of NFTs. You can then, if that cat game developer has a contract with another, let's say a card game developer, you can then transfer your cat NFT that you spent hours and hours of building, like the cat family. You can then take that cat NFT and import it into the card game NFT, and then you could now play the card game with your cat specific NFT. And again, the idea is that NFTs are being used, or the utility in NFTs are being done in a way that nobody has ever thought about before. And the reason why we're able to do this again is because of the unique aspect of the NFT, as I discussed earlier. Because it's unique, because it's non-fungible, there's only one of that NFT that can then be represented in another game if that NFT is then transferred to that video game. There's a lot of utility also in the gaming space when it comes to just creating your own business based on an NFT. I'm not going to name any specific games, but there are NFT games where you can play, where you could potentially earn something, and then you can then contract with other people to play for you and make your earnings even more. So there's a lot of utility. People are figuring out, is this legal? Is this not legal? And there's a lot of discussions that are happening in that space, which, that's not what this panel is really about. But really what we're talking about again is that, there is utility in getting these NFTs and using them. The idea is that you want to make sure to do your own research so that you could understand if you want to participate, within that marketplace or that utility economy that game is creating, and make that decision for yourself.
Mm-hmm. And while you're doing that research, you're creating a community, right? Because you're getting to know other people who are already in the space that are doing the work that you're interested in. So you're getting aligned with people who are like-minded, and who are very much interested in supporting your cause. So by the time that you decide to drop the NFT, you already have a following behind you. They say, oh, okay, Lemni, it's time. We're going to support you with this, and you might potentially sell out. Another opportunity too is like, Iris's organization. There's a lot of incubators as well that are supporting artists who are not just only artists but creatives who are onboarding into the space. And one of those that you had mentioned is the Dream Conduit, which is I'm the coaching conduit lead. And what I work there with people who are coming in is talking to them about how to create community, how to connect with people, and how to kind of like really establish the support system that's going to push you forward. Because as we know in life, we can't do anything by ourselves. And this NFT space is a place that really harbors and hones in on the opportunity that we can kind of like really further explore, while coming from like, very individualistic cultures here in the West, that really kind of personify and exemplify what is possible when we're doing things together.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know all of you are advocates and activists, and we're talking about utility. Are there and NFTs have been sort of a way for folks to band together and make an impact or even fund certain activist projects. Can you, I guess more than just breeding game kitties, but can you all, I know Dr. Perez, you've been on a couple projects like that, and I know Iris, you also have, activism has been really a core part of your work. So can you talk about how your activist work and the utility from NFTs has brought you, I guess, more results than just your work before NFTs?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for that question. So essentially, I think as a clinical psychologist, I was previously, before coming into this world, I was director of behavioral health at a federally qualified health center in West Oakland. And a lot of the work that we were doing there was really integrating these alternative programs like yoga, drumming, singing, dancing as modes and ways of healing, because we know that it's not just only talk therapy that creates a healing environment and a healing space. So while coming into the NFT space and being part of the Dream Conduit, as a Dream Conduit lead for the coaching conduit, I'm able to talk about mental health in a way that it's more explorative, a lot more non-traditional, and in a way that really speaks to what the creators and the people who are within the NFT space are experiencing. A lot of the things that we're seeing with this population is people who are not necessarily taking care of ourselves, because it is a global environment. There is no time and space, so people aren't necessarily sleeping or eating, going outside. I think that a lot of the things with the advent of the pandemic, a lot of folks were, forced to kind of like sit down and be at home. So what are the types of kind of like things that come up for people, when there's so much uncertainty, which is a lot of anxiety and depression. So those are the types of things that we talk about at the Dream Conduit, in that particular coaching lead that I'm a part of. That we can really destigmatize mental health and really make it accessible in a way that is more ritualistic, more tribal, more collective, and less kind of like attributed to this, like, okay, I'm going to go sit with my therapist and, they're going to write notes and they're going to bill me and I'm going to have a diagnosis, etc. It's more about how community can heal, and how we can really forge and move forward together and really reify this new world that we want to see, where everyone has equal access, where everyone has an opportunity if they want to create an NFT, and push forward whatever it is that they're seeing that they want to change in the world, and so that's really important for us to see, and that's one of the efforts that I'm definitely behind when it comes to this particular DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, that we're doing here in the Dream Conduit. So those are a couple of things that we're doing. One of the parts of the Dream Conduit that we also do is a sovereignty conduit, where people are talking about finances and ways to utilize funds and money as a method for liberation. Because I think that a lot of the things in the Web 2 versus Web 3 world, when we think of Web 2, is like we're thinking about curators and middlemen and managers and people who are in the middle, who are really kind of like negotiating the ways that these creatives are kind of like interfacing with their collectors. That doesn't exist in Web 3. In Web 3, we're really talking about decentralization, and what decentralization means is that everyone has equal access and that everyone's a boss, if that makes sense. Everyone comes in with their own expertise, and that everyone can really come into within a space of like respect and mutual collegiality, and really understand that each person is directed in their own volition and really wanting to do something to support and change the world. So that's where the activism comes in, and that's how I'm participating. So thank you again for that question.
Yeah, Iris, I want to push it to you next. I'm wondering if you can talk about how NFT technology, blockchain, actually enables you to do activist work.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have a nonprofit or you could say like nonprofit or social justice organization, right? My company is a for-profit company. But one of the things that I'm really passionate about is systems of oppression, addressing systems of oppression on a global scale and how they impact people. And one of the largest markers of oppression is inequality, income inequality, wealth inequality, and the fact that so many people around the world have so little, and then you have a small percentage of people that own the vast majority of resources and access to opportunity. And so, I think what's really powerful about NFTs is the fact that the vast majority of people around the world don't have valuable physical assets, right? They don't have houses. They don't own their houses. They don't own their land, right? But every single culture and every single community is always creating intellectual property. If you look at communities in India, communities across, the continent of Africa, Asia, et cetera, you have these amazing cultural dances, you have these amazing fashion designs and clothings and hairstyles and, you name it. And so, I'm looking at NFTs as a potential tool that a lot of these communities can use to start to actually monetize their intellectual property, which is valuable, it is powerful, it does matter. And so if they can monetize this and sell it and make a money off of it, I think that we can potentially see a massive shift in a massive reallocation of wealth, essentially, on a global scale. And so the core mission of my company is really to tap into all of these communities around the world and help them onboard into the NFT space and into blockchain and crypto in general. The other thing that's really kind of powerful and beautiful about blockchain technology, crypto, NFTs, is that it's essentially, it can allow you, if it's done correctly, it can allow you to essentially create a virtual economy. Okay. And so it means that instead of your economy being based on like the US dollar, for example, or the currency in your country, you can actually, as a community, as a village, as a city, as a small collective, you can actually create your own asset and start trading it amongst each other and essentially build an economy that is outside of, the government or the whatever the kind of like official economy is. And so I think there's also a lot of power there for people to really come together and bring their resources together to create these economies that they can then use to actually provide themselves with resources, opportunity, education, systems, et cetera, that they need to thrive.
So this is a technology that's sort of allowing folks to reimagine or rethink about wealth and economy, value, trading things, and sort of start to define their own terms working in that space. Yeah, very cool. I think that sort of leads us into another question: is you're looking at big visions for the future for this emerging technology. I know a lot is changing even on a daily basis as we speak. But I'm wondering, maybe we can go all the way just around the room and ask what are you expecting to see in the future, and what would you like to see in the future of this new technology? Where is it going? I know there was sort of like a big, maybe people say like a craze of NFTs. But this technology, I think, is something that is starting to make those radical changes in the way people think about value or wealth or community accountability and assets, ownership, intellectual property, and those little shifts in people's thinking. That's, I think, going to have a lasting impact. And so I'm wondering if you can talk about what you expect to see in the future going forward, and aspirationally what you would like to see in the future going forward. So I guess we'll start with Stephen.
Yeah, sure. So what I would love to see is what's actually being built right now, which is Web3. There's a lot of talk right now about what Web3 is. Currently, when we use the internet, that is considered Web 2.0, where we access a website or a social media platform based on the server that a company owns. Where with Web3, since it would be blockchain focused, everything would be decentralized. So you can think of decentralized social media platforms where you can interact with each other without necessarily going through a third party. I think that for me is the thing that I'm most excited about that's currently being built out.
So when you say decentralized, it means it's everyone who is participating in that particular blockchain is sort of the owner of it. It's not backed against some external thing.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
and when you're talking about Web3, you're talking about the internet.
Yes, I'm talking about the internet, and again, the internet not being owned by one entity or corporation or group of entities or group of corporations, but instead everybody who is participating within that economy or that digital economy would be an owner of the content that is actually happening on that economy or platform.
And before we move on from that topic, are there challenges you see coming up? I know we're talking about like very lofty aspirations and stuff, but just keeping our feet on the ground. Do you see challenges with that? What are some challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first challenge that I see is a technological challenge, which I really appreciate the work that you're doing, that Brandy's doing, and the rest of the Tech Connect team and NYPL in making sure that everyone has access to technology. Because if you don't have a computer, if you don't have internet, if you don't have access to a smartphone, whether if that's coming into the library to do that or at home using a library loan device, you're going to need technology in order to access it. So making sure that everybody has access to technology, I think, is going to be the first major hurdle. And the second major hurdle would be the legal concerns. Um, Unfortunately, whenever we have something good, whether if it's technological or not, we always have bad actors. And so some of the things that do concern me would be if it's all decentralized, if somebody posts something on a decentralized version of Twitter, for example, are we going to be able to remove that content if it shouldn't be there? That's a major concern for me. Um, Also, another major concern in regards to the legal aspect is how does that conflict with current laws that currently regulate a lot of what happens on the internet? So those are huge. Those two pots are two big things that are huge risks or concerns regarding Web3, the decentralized internet. But that doesn't mean that there aren't creative solutions to them, which people are actively writing on and thinking about. And you could go on the internet now, and again, the theme that I'm hoping that we're giving you from this panel is do your own research, educate yourself, come to more panels like this, go on Google, go on Yahoo, go on Bing, whatever is your favorite search engine, but just try to consume as much information as that's out there, because you'll find a lot of little nuggets of really interesting things that are going on that you never thought was possible, that are literally going to happen very soon.
Thank you. Yeah. Iris, I think you're next. You got Stephen the guinea pig, and I'm going to ask you the same questions. What do you expect to see in this emerging technology in the near future, and what do you hope to see?
Yeah. So, so I have thoughts around decentralization, and decentralization is actually a much more complicated topic than we're going to be able to get into today. And there is a disagreement within the NFT crypto space about whether or not decentralization is actually needed or even possible. Okay, and so I would actually disagree with the definition that Web3 equates to decentralization. I think that there's a lot of different definitions that people have of Web3. And if you go online and you look it up, you'll see that like there's probably 50 different ways that people explain it. And a lot of it is based on what people want. There's no kind of agreed upon definition of Web3. For me personally, I have a lot of concerns about, the concept of decentralization, which is very akin to anarchy. And I think that, I know anarchists, and I've worked with anarchists before in my political work, in my community organizing work, and a lot of the principles are the same. And they're not necessarily bad, but they do come with a lot of risks, right? They come with situations where if someone's harmed, if someone is taken advantage of, if someone does something dangerous or bad, who is going to deal with it? Who's going to address it? How do you resolve the issue, or how do you resolve the harm that was caused? And so that's something that we're seeing as an issue in the NFT and in the crypto space a lot, is that there's a lot of bad actors that are taking advantage of people. And because there aren't regulations and there aren't centralized organizations that are responsible for addressing these issues, it's actually very negatively affecting people. And so I think that what we're likely going to see is some sort of, we're going to get to a place where there's some sort of mixture between centralized systems and decentralized systems. I think it's probably unlikely that we'll get to a world where it's completely decentralized. I just don't see it happening at all. And I wouldn't want that personally. I would love to see a lot more systems in place to protect people and support people if they are taken advantage of, or if they are scammed or hacked or whatnot. And then the thing that I think is really important is making sure that this new industry doesn't become just a replica of things that have happened in the past. And we're already starting to see that the majority of the wealth, the majority of the funding, the majority of the opportunities, the majority of like venture capital, investment is going to wealthy or upper class white men who have, in many ways an advantage in being able to take advantage of this industry, or being able to build technology and get the funding to get their projects off of the ground. And so, even when it comes to having people around you that can teach you around the technology, teach you about the technology and help you onboard into the space. It's been a very specific privileged group of people that have been able to benefit from the space the most. Mm-hmm. And so, with every new industry, there's always a massive wealth building process that happens. And I think it's really important that we make sure that in this new industry, when this wealth building process happens, that we try and include as many people as possible, as many diverse groups and communities of people as possible in this new exciting industry. And I think it's something that requires a lot of intention. It requires a lot of thought. It has to be something that people intentionally put effort into. Otherwise, what we're going to see is a lot of wealthy people getting wealthier. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, that's a big part of what I want to be able to contribute to the space is making sure that we take, the Black people, the brown people, the women, the people who don't speak English, right? The people who come from poor communities, rural communities, et cetera, is making sure that we figure out how to include them in this process.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Yeah, and you addressed the challenge question at first, and I appreciate where you went with that. Dr. Lemni, mm-hmm. I would also like to ask you the same question. What do you expect to see in this new space in NFT world going forward, and what do you hope to see as well?
Yeah, gosh, thank you so much, and I echo a lot of what has already been said. The regulation is definitely something that's necessary and has to be curated in a way that's very sensitive. For instance, and I speak from my own experience. Currently, someone has taken my identity on Instagram and utilizing that identity and the rapport that I've built with the community to go into the back channel and directly message people and try to scam them and get them to invest in money and into projects that are not real. And it's taken me a really long time to navigate and negotiate with Instagram, and have had a lot of my friends reported this already. But because this is so slow moving, that a lot of my friends are saying, "Hey, Lemni, is this you?" And I'm absolutely not. So those are the things that are happening that are very real and that need to be taken care of. And so those are just kind of the cases in point. For me, what I would love to see again, I grew up going to the New York Public Library. My branch is in Washington Heights, and as a kid, yeah, and as a kid, as a 13-year-old, what I would go and do there is like sew sleeping bags for the homeless. Right. And so having those safe spaces, having Web3 be a safe space for people to show up and be not only a kid from Washington Heights, but a kid who's like really interested in social impact and activism, but to show up fully as who you are. So for me, having someone come in and integrated fully psychologically, right, and having all parts of their psyches come into the NFT space and say, hey, I'm a woman, I'm a Buddhist, I'm queer, I'm Dominican, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and without leaving anything behind and coming in, I think that this has been a very kind of like open and adaptive world that has been very welcoming, to people who are coming from very vast different walks of life and are very much interested in establishing a space that is equitable for all, and especially for people who are having high barriers to entry. We're seeing very much of the same of the old come into the new, so while it's not as exaggerated, because there are, the spaces, it tends to bring in the brightest minds, the luminaries of various fields, and so that commonality really kind of like demystifies a lot of those walls that we kind of put up, but also still there's underlying issues that, particularly with the wealth and the gap between the haves and the have-nots, is something that I would definitely love to see shift and change.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that is being built out, I guess, because this is such a new field that is being shaped right now, I guess, as we speak.
Yeah, absolutely. But when I first came in, when I first heard of NFTs is October of 2020, and I came and I was like, finally, my friends were like, you need to come in, Lem, and I was like, no, I'm not interested in tech. And finally, when I jumped in March, I noticed that most of the spaces were mostly white males. And I was like, how do I get into this bro culture? And how do I break that, those impasses to really kind of like make my desires and my values seen. I was respected because, one, I was a psychologist, two, and because I had other different things in kind of like my tool belt. I think that, again, speaking to the diversity of thinking and thought, that we are thought partners, and that we do collectively come together and try to figure out solutions to a lot of problems in the world, but that there is a lot of kind of like bad actors, as Iris was saying, in terms of people who are very much interested in just making money and flipping projects, and growing their own wealth rather than really distributing what they're earning, because what they're earning is coming from the backs of the people who are co-creating the space. So those are some of the things that we're seeing and some of the things that I would really love to see shift.
Thank you so much, for sharing your thoughts and breaking down for us, starting with what an NFT is, talking about some examples and the ways that they can be connected to virtual spaces, the metaverse, and also physical, real, concrete projects, active projects in our community, the way that NFTs can create these different connections between the creators and curators, and then also other folks who are in the NFT space. Thank you for sharing your experience, giving advice to new folks, onboarding them into this world, and also your visions for what NFTs have the possibility of doing as a new tool, a new technological tool for sort of upending the way that we think about technology and ownership and wealth and value in our communities. So this has been, really wonderful and informative. We have some time for audience questions. If anyone has questions, we have 2 microphones on either side. If you would like to come up and ask a question of the folks up here. And so I'm also sort of check our Twitter. Are we getting any questions? No one on Twitter has questions. But if anyone from the audience has questions, you can feel free to come up and ask if you would like. But they have given us a lot to think about and sort of a lot to maybe go home and Google and research more. So feel free to file up. Oh, you have a question? Is that Anne?
Yay.
Hi.
This has been amazing, mind-blowing. Your advice for any small business owners just starting off and exploring this avenue, what would it be? What would be the first 3 things that they should do?
Do you have a business?
Yes, and it's I would describe it as marketing, branding, consulting, educational, training, that sort of thing.
Okay. So I would say the first thing would be to do your research. Find spaces where you can listen and learn from people that are actively building their own projects. As Lemni mentioned, Twitter Spaces, Clubhouse, these are really great places where you can hear what people are doing, and people tend to be very honest and very kind of open about their thought process, their failures, their successes, etc. So really just taking the time to learn from other folks. Google and YouTube are great for some of the more kind of practical learnings, but I think it's always best to hear directly from people, like their process. So I would say that's the first thing is to research, listen, learn. I think the second thing would be to really kind of think deeply about what your business is trying to accomplish and whether or not NFTs can help you accomplish that better or faster or more efficiently. And if it actually doesn't do that, then it may not even be necessary to try and incorporate NFTs into the business. So I would say, just kind of really make sure that there's a real use case as opposed to an attempt to just kind of try and make money because all these other people are making money. You can make money easily in the short term with NFTs, but in the long run, right, that's like the true play. And a lot of projects that have made money up front are struggling to survive over an extended period of time because there's actually no real depth to the project. So that's another thing as well to think about.
Can I follow up on that and just ask what is something that is like a good candidate some examples of maybe things that have a lot of value in turning them into NFTs versus something that would be not as useful?
So I think, if you have in the case of your business where it looks like you do consulting, right? So for something like that, you may not necessarily need to make NFTs yourself. Maybe a part of your strategy is to figure out how your clients can benefit from NFTs and then create an NFT strategy that you incorporate into your clients, the consulting that you provide to your clients, and figuring out how to put together like the resources that they would need in order to execute on an NFT project. So, if when it comes to NFTs, there's always the technical part, right? The smart contracts, the software, all of that. You have the art part. If the NFT is going to come with art, you have to find the artist and get the art created, right? Then there's the marketing and the selling strategy. Then there's the utility strategy. What do the people get if they buy it, right? So being able to understand NFTs in a way where you can actually incorporate that into your consulting is an option. So yeah, so I think there's a lot of ways to engage with NFTs that doesn't necessarily require creating an NFT and selling it. If you are going to create NFTs and sell them, the main use cases are taking something that's physical that has value. So for example, memorabilia, right? Like maybe you have, signed, autographed, baseball cards from, I don't know, some famous baseball player or something like that. If you have a business that has assets, figuring out how to turn those assets into NFTs, right? If you're in real estate, if you're in the car industry, like any sort of industry that deals with physical assets, there's opportunity to start selling those assets as NFTs. There's also use cases around, excuse me, there's also use cases around data and being able to use NFTs to actually track data. So what we're seeing is in the healthcare industry, for example, we're starting to see innovations around the use of NFTs to actually store people's medical data, because right now, if you needed to track down your, medical history, you have to go to like the hospital or the doctor or the clinic or wherever and go and get that information directly. We currently don't have a proper way for a person to keep all of their medical data with them wherever they go. And so there are people that are innovating around how to store and track people's medical data using NFTs, and using blockchains that are actually not public but are private. And so your data is protected and doesn't violate HIPAA laws. So, again, it's not just about taking an asset and selling it, or, selling NFTs just to try and like raise funding. There's actual like ways that you can solve real problems.
Yeah, and it could be anything.
Yeah, Dr. Perez was saying that she has worked as a curator, has worked as a collector of NFTs, as a coach. So there are lots of different roles, I suppose, that folks can play in this diverse community as it's being built up. Are you going to say something, Steve?
Yeah, and I just want to echo Iris's first point. Just doing your own research, educating yourself, coming to events like this, reaching out to your local library, finding Dr. McNeil, finding Dr. McNeil and saying, hey, Dr. McNeil, we want education programs on NFTs and blockchain. Reaching out to your local council member. We want education programs on blockchain. This seems like it's going to be the future. I want to educate myself. Starting your own meetup group in your own community. You never know who's in your own community. Maybe you could have a meetup group, and that one nugget of information that somebody has, you never know the snowball effect of that. So again, I think the theme of this panel is, again, educate yourself, doing your own research, finding communities, building your own community. I think that that's a great way to start learning a lot about, this space and this technology.
Yeah, and just to wrap it up with a bow, because there's someone with a question here potentially.
Yes, I do have a question.
Yeah. Yeah.
First,
Well, I'd like to finish if I may.
Well, yeah, we'll hold the question.
Oh,
one
sure.
more note
Yeah.
from Dr. Lenny, and then
okay.
we'll move to the next
Yeah.
question.
Oh, sure, no trouble.
Thank you. Yeah. So just to wrap it up with a bow before we hear from the audience member here, in terms of like doing what you want and what you're saying here about really pushing forward with what it is that you want to see in the world. For me, I would have never had any access to becoming an NFT artist had I not come into the space. So as a curator, it's very important to me that when I'm curating these shows with these wonderful group of, there's 12 individuals and 9 of us are women and 4 of us are Latina. It's really wonderful to be part of this very diverse space where these folks are like, marginalized and historically underrepresented, and want to see more more people who look like us, because historically people in art have looked a particular type of way, who have gotten a certain level of education, who are connected with certain types of people. And so for us, it's very important to bring in as many voices as possible. As a curator, I'm not looking for what I like. I'm looking for what is going to be seen and what other people will like. I'm trying to go beyond my own biases and really try to be inclusive towards voices that have not been seen, and to really reify what the art world is looking like, So those are the things that we want to see. I want to see moving forward in the future. So that's it for me. I'm
Come
so
on back
sorry.
up here.
Please.
We want to hear your question. Also, I'll mention if anyone tuned in late, we're also taking questions on Twitter, which is hashtag NFT TechTalk. You can hashtag it for us, and hopefully we will take a look and see your question. So if you want to tune in, if you're tuning in from the live stream and you want to tweet at us, NYPL Tech Connect is our account, and you can hashtag NFT Tech Talks. What's your question?
Well, I'm so grateful, as I'm sure many of us are, of your openness, your sharing your information. And personally, I'm deeply moved to understand how integral your desire for, to coin a phrase, doing good by doing well. It's absolutely great. It's the pragmatism and meets idealism. It's very moving, as I say. And speaking of pragmatism, does there exist a kind of an online template whereby royalties, a smart contract, if I've learned a phrase today, whereby a smart contract integrates the continuing sharing of royalties with not-for-profit entities? Is there something that already exists so that, I'll speak personally, don't have to reinvent the wheel to create this this legal structure? Question mark. That was a little digressive, but I hope you understood my question.
Steve, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. So I think that that's a great question. Unfortunately, I don't know of any platform or service off the top of my head that would be essentially, I'm assuming you're referring to like a legal Zoom, where it would be like you put in information and boom, you have your smart contract.
Well, something that's not going to cost a fortune, bottom line.
Yeah.
Whether it's legal Zoom or, because this, if I'm understanding correctly,
Mm-hmm.
does represent something of a barrier to entry.
Yeah.
If one's got to put down not only the gas fees, but also engage one of you, at God knows what per hour. So that's why I'm looking for some kind of, could it be like analogous to a 501c3 umbrella organization whereby an artist with doing good intentions baked into the whole endeavor can hook up with another organization and not reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, I think that that's a great question. Unfortunately, I don't know of any off the top of my head. However, the tools that we want to impart you guys with, again, is just kind of doing that research, which I know that can seem a bit daunting, especially a lot daunting, especially with a new technology and a new area that there's a lot of buzz and a lot of hype and misinformation and people who have different opinions and so forth. But what I would encourage for you and for everybody watching is to look up, whether if it's, smart contract generator or, automatic smart contract, and just doing your own research. We don't want to sit up here and say, oh yeah, you need to go to this website and it'll do exactly what you need. Because unfortunately, if you go to that website and it doesn't do exactly what you need, you're going to say, well, Steven told me. So I really want to encourage again for everyone to do your own research, which is actually, ironically enough, is an ethos within the blockchain community. There's a lot of times where I'll see NFTs that say DYOR on it, Dior. And the idea again is we encourage each other, even in the NFT and blockchain space, that I may say something to you, but that may not be 100% correct. So I really want you to do your own research. And so it's not exactly an answer to your question, but I'm hoping that I'm imparting a gift to you that you find very useful in the search for what you need for your business ventures.
So I actually have an answer.
She has an answer.
We'll just move down the line, more research. Okay.
So when you are creating an NFT, there's ways that you can do it that are entirely self-managed. So designing the smart contract on your own, right, which generally requires being an engineer. Like you have to know how to code, you have to know the language of the blockchain so that you can write the smart contract and so that you can deploy the NFT on the blockchain. However, there are platforms, which is what the vast majority of artists use, that provide the tools and the templates for you to set it up yourself. And so that's what the majority of artists use. They use platforms like OpenSea, platforms like Foundation, SuperRare, Rarible. These are platforms, think of Amazon, right, or eBay, where you go and you just kind of, you upload your product images and you create your little storefront, and it kind of like has the tools for you to just put it together, and then Amazon facilitates the trades. So on a lot of these platforms, what you do is essentially you upload your JPEG or your file. The platform will then turn it into an NFT or quote unquote mint it, and then you have the ability to set up the royalty structure. Okay. Mm-hmm. On some platforms, it's a standard structure, like 10%, for example, and you can't change it. On other platforms, you can actually adjust what that percentage is. So you can make it 5%, 10%, 30%, right? So it just depends on the platform. And then on some of these platforms, they are also now starting to allow you to customize the smart contract even more. Mm-hmm. In some cases, they will charge you an additional fee, like you might have to pay $1,000 or something like that to be able to create a custom smart contract, which is going to be way cheaper than hiring a developer to write the contract from scratch. But there is that option as well if you want to customize your smart contract. And then in addition to that, whether you're customizing it or not, in a lot of cases, you can actually create splits. And so what that means is that instead of the royalties going to one wallet, you can have the royalties go to multiple wallets. And so you can have, let's say your royalty is 10%, you could say 5% is going to me and the other 5% is going to this nonprofit's wallet, and it's set up that way permanently. So that is something that you can do. A platform that I would recommend is called NiftyKit, niftykit.com. They allow you, NIFTYKIT.com. NiftyKit allows you to customize your smart contract on the Polygon blockchain or on the Ethereum blockchain. And I believe it's like $1,000 for an Ethereum contract. And then I think the Polygon contract is a bit cheaper. And then you can deploy your NFT to the blockchain and to OpenSea. OpenSea is the largest NFT platform in the world right now. So NiftyKit is one option that I highly recommend people explore. And then another platform that you can explore for smart contracts is called Manifold, manifold.xyz, manifold.xyz.
Well, that's more research right there, and I think one of the, I mean, we're all about research and stuff at the library, and I think one of the things too is we encourage you, we're not giving you financial advice, legal advice, but we have some experts who do this all the time, who are, who are absolutely, learning, know a lot about what's going on a day-to-day basis in this field. And it's also, it's cool to hear it in the moment and understand that this is something that's changing constantly. New technology associated with NFTs, blockchain, et cetera, is coming out really on a daily basis, and it's a constantly moving field. So even if someone is tuning into this later, watching this later, there might be new developments or changes and everything too. So I think it still stands. Listen, research, and figure out, and think about it. Hopefully, it comes in as a little pebble that stays in your brain and maybe wiggles around and turns into something else. So,
I could add. Please, after you.
One more platform. It's called Foundation. So foundation.app, foundation.app. This is a platform where it will be the most streamlined and the most straightforward, less customization, but you can split royalties in 4 ways. Whereas some of the other ones, you can split them up to like 20, 30 ways. So there's limitations with Foundation, but it's very simple. It's very straightforward. You need an invite in order to get onto the platform. That's the only kind of rule. So if I have plenty invites, I have a good relationship with Foundation. So if anyone wants an invite to that platform, reach out. We will send you one.
And I just wanted to re-emphasize Jenna's point. So I think all the platforms that Iris just highlighted are amazing. Make sure to either read the terms or just try to educate yourself the best way possible, because some of these platforms have limitations on what you can do with an NFT afterwards. And so again, I think we're not going to get into, because again, this is not a legal talk. We're here to educate you guys. But what I would hate to happen is for anybody watching this to create an NFT on one platform and then come to find out that you could only use an NFT on that platform, or that the royalties are only limited to the sales that happen on that platform and not anywhere else. So again, I really encourage everybody to educate yourselves, to ask questions. If anybody wants to, I'm pretty sure anybody on the panel would agree with this. If you want to come up to us and ask us questions afterwards, we are happy to answer questions, but just really try to educate yourself as much as possible.
Yeah, and it's good to have the concrete, tangible advice, like where to look and stuff, where to get more info, like these platforms, but then digging in on your own. There's a lot to dig into.
Yeah.
Do we have any more audience questions?
I could finish with the point that I was going to make, if that's okay.
Please,
and then
please
we
do.
can hear from the gentleman. I would love to. One of the other spots that we haven't really talked about is the metaverse, and this is another place where you can also sell your NFTs, and this is a virtual reality world, right? That has very different platforms that you can sell your NFTs on. Some of my friends have encouraged me to hold my clinical sessions there, because it provides people to put on a VR set, right? And to really come into these worlds where they can really reify and work through their traumas in a way that they couldn't in the past. For instance, if you had an accident crossing a bridge, then we would kind of like have a session where there would be this environment that would simulate that bridge, and we could have this talk therapy or this other type of kind of like healing process where you can really overcome those traumas. So this is a place. Also, there's a one space called Crypto Voxels, now being called Voxels, and where I have a gallery of all my work from all of my collections. And so people can go in there with their sets, right, with their with our headsets and really look at the work and click on a button and purchase it as well. So those are opportunities also for people to explore selling their NFTs, not just on the platforms that Iris was mentioning, but also in the virtual reality world. So thank you so much for that. Yeah.
All right, we have one. We actually have a couple questions from Twitter, but we only have time for one more. So here it is from Sherry Littlefield. Sherry would like to know: do you think NFT creators share the same goal as the typical artist in regards to contemporary art? Where do you think NFTs fit in the next 5, 10, 15 years? Do you see them in museums, art fairs, major acquisitions, or is this a totally different space? What does that look like?
I think I'll go into that from like an artist perspective. You know, I've had some of my work shown in the metaverse and in galleries in the metaverse, right? There's a lot of artists who I kind of communicate with who are coming from, you know, the real world art sphere. I've had conversations, you know, with museums here, with the MoMA, etc., and they're asking me, Lemni, what do you think we should do, you know, in terms of like coming into this new world, because it is so different, and the galleries are becoming obsolete and the curators are becoming obsolete, you know, and so what are the opportunities for the artists themselves? And to me, my answer would be the sky's the limit. Whatever you want to do. You know, it really is a free space for people to come in, you know, whatever it is that you can kind of like strategize and plan and really idealize and create, you can manifest it. You know, it just takes time, but there's definitely no one getting in your way except for you and money. You know, essentially, you know, so if you have those assets, you know, and you have, you know, saved a sufficient amount of cash to be able to come in, but even then you can still come into other types of blockchains like Tezos, for instance, you know, where you can get your feet wet, you know, and start to sell your work while you know, I think that the assets there are sold at a lower price. You can definitely come in and come up to speed with what the experience is of selling an NFT and utilizing your art in a way that can really kind of interface with this technology before you go into maybe an Ethereum blockchain, which is a little bit more costly to jump into, if that makes sense. So for artists that are coming into the space, you really can do any type of art that you want. There's a voice in a space for everyone, you know, including someone who's a psychologist who wasn't classically trained as an artist. You know, the sky's the limit. So that would be my answer to that. But I'm also biased in that regard. But I've also sold more than 61 of one NFTs, you know, in less than 1 year. So thank you so much.
Last minute thoughts, but we're wrapping it up. You're gonna say a couple lines, but we're gonna call it after that.
I feel like there was someone in the back that had a question. I feel like.
Oh no, I was just.
Oh, he was signaling to me that we had the Twitter questions. So I just want to say thank you all so much for joining us and for sharing your experience in this field, your knowledge, your expertise, what you've learned, what you're envisioning. It's really cool to be with the vanguard of NFT technologists, and we really appreciate you coming out and talking to us. And sort of fitting in with our vision at the library of education and understanding technologies as they come out in multiple aspects. So thank you for joining us. I just want to give everyone a chance to say maybe your social media handles in case you're interested in seeing more from these folks. You could say your social media handles or where else we can find you on the internet, and so people can keep up with the conversation now that they've heard it from you folks. So Stephen, you want to share?
Yeah, sure. So my Twitter handle is Codex Est Lex. What that means is code is law in Latin. So if that's easier to look up, you do that. And yeah, you could connect with me on Twitter, and I'll be happy to answer any questions, talk to you, more personally about resources if you have questions about that.
Iris?
Yeah, so my personal Twitter handle is Cosmos Iris. So that's CosmosIris, Cosmos and then Iris. If you go to my personal Twitter, you'll be able to find the handle for my business. and all of the brands and projects that we do. We do a lot of community building work in the ecosystem for ourselves, for platforms, and for blockchains. And so we do live events, we do online events. We have 6 events on Twitter Spaces that we do every week religiously. We have a number of programs that we're rolling out throughout the year. And we also just launched a consulting arm as well. So you can book paid consulting sessions with either myself or other folks on our team so that we can answer some of your like direct questions and hold your hand and walk you through things like setting up a wallet or minting an NFT or developing your marketing strategy and things like that. The website for the company is umbadaima.com, which is UMBADAIMA. So umbadaima.com.
Sure. And I can be found, my name is Lemni. I go by Dr. Lemni in the space. So Lemni is spelled L-E, M as in Mary, N as in Nancy, Y. And my handle on Twitter Spaces is LEM __ NY. Again, the name Lemni, LEM __ NY. On Instagram, you can find me under LEM _ NY. And please look out for that fraud that is impersonating me. Do not follow them. They are LEM _ NY _. That is not me. Please don't follow that account. Secondly, I can also be found. It's crypto. I can also be found through the Dream Conduit. And you can find that at the Dream Conduit on Twitter as well. And we have a Discord. At the Dream Conduit, I hold a weekly coaching space on Clubhouse. And that's on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. And so you can find us there. We are on Clubhouse every single day, but Monday having an oration conduit, coaching conduit, and oh my goodness, my conduit as well, and also the sovereignty conduit. So thank you so much. Oh, and we also have a blockchain essentials for those who are curious about blockchain. We also do that room on Sundays. So thank you so much. Looking forward to connecting with you.
We're NYPL Tech Connect. You can also learn more about our classes. We're housed on the 6th floor of this building. Come by, check out our regular programming, our classes, and you can follow us at NYPL Tech Connect on Twitter, and check out more Tech Talks. We'll have more of these in the future. So thank you for joining our inaugural in-person talk. And I guess we'll stick around. I know you have some folks that might want to connect after. And
Thank you.
thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.